Standing in the hallway with a lukewarm mug of coffee, I watched a coworker slap a printed piece of paper over my wooden door sign. 20 years of dedicated service to this company was erased in less than 10 seconds with cheap clear tape. To make matters worse, they managed to spell my replacement name entirely wrong on the freshly printed sheet. That moment made me realize that my time in corporate obscurity was officially over. For 2 long decades, I was the quiet backbone holding this entire enterprise together behind closed doors. While executives chased headlines, I managed every state operating permit, health compliance filing, and regulatory audit that kept us from getting shut down. Nobody paid attention to my role because everything always ran smoothly under my supervision. That invisibility was my greatest asset, but it was also about to become their ultimate nightmare. The downfall began when board members hired a new operational executive named Preston Thorne to modernize our structure. Preston was a flashy Ivy League graduate who wore expensive suits and loved tossing around meaningless business buzzwords during every single meeting. He viewed regulatory compliance as a simple checkbox that could easily be automated by software. Within 3 weeks of his arrival, I was quietly stripped from key meetings and handed a termination notice. Inside the glass conference room, Preston sat behind his sleek desk and offered me a condescending smile. He explained that my role as compliance director was being eliminated in favor of a leaner model. He even claimed that my state operator credentials were no longer essential to their future plans. I did not bother arguing with his ignorance. I simply placed my ID badge on the table and walked away into the morning sun. What Preston failed to research was a massive legal detail that protected 3 of our largest regional operations. The state did not grant operating permits to the corporation itself, but rather directly to my personal name under statutory regulations. That specific credential was non-transferable and had no backup operator registered on file. Without my active status linked to the system, the company had 0 legal authority to process a single unit. I walked into a quiet coffee shop across the street and opened my personal laptop on a small wooden table. My administrative credentials were still fully active because the IT team had not bothered to revoke my access yet. With a few deliberate clicks on the state regulatory portal, I submitted a formal request for voluntary license revocation. The official system processed the action instantly, issuing an automatic freeze across all 3 operating territories. Next, I located an old compliance memo I had sent to the executive board 2 years prior, which clearly outlined this exact risk. I forwarded that document directly to the assistant of our board chairman without typing a single extra word. Finally, I deleted all recurring automatic renewal reminders from my calendar before closing my screen. The trap was set, and I was going to sit back and watch the entire machine crumble. Over at headquarters, Preston was busy hosting a morning celebration call to boast about cutting corporate weight. He stood in front of a whiteboard, drawing diagrams about efficiency and telling everyone that legacy employees were slowing down progress. When a junior analyst named Zach asked if our regional licenses were still valid, Preston brushed off the concern entirely. He foolishly claimed that relying on one individual name was an outdated habit of the past. Down in the legal department, an attorney named Gwen received an automated warning notice from the State Oversight Office. The message clearly stated that our primary facilities were currently operating in direct violation of state regulations. Gwen immediately called the Regulatory Bureau to resolve the issue, only to learn that my credential had been officially revoked. Panic spread through the legal team as they realized the company was facing immediate legal suspension. By mid-morning, a state inspector arrived at our largest field facility in Bakersfield and ordered workers to stop all operations. The site manager tried to explain that it was just an administrative error, but the inspector pointed directly to the formal suspension paperwork. Named operator authorization had been revoked earlier that morning, leaving the facility legally helpless. Operations were forced to grind to a halt while desperate calls flooded the main corporate desk. Inside the executive war room, Preston was still bragging about his new operational strategy when the front desk transferred a frantic call. The field manager screamed through the speakerphone that state agents were physically shutting down the plant. Preston turned pale, insisting that there was a simple digital workaround to assign a new name. However, Gwen walked into the room holding my old memo, explaining that the system signature was permanently locked to my identity. Our chief systems administrator attempted to manually override the security parameters in the compliance portal, but the screen flashed a fatal error message. The entire validation pipeline was hard-coded into state infrastructure, meaning any attempt to spoof the credentials would trigger criminal tampering charges. While leadership argued in circles, another field site in Columbus reported a full operational freeze. The company was losing millions of dollars with every passing minute. Just before noon, 2 state enforcement officers and uniformed police officers walked straight through the glass lobby doors. Janine at the front desk sat paralyzed as they served formal lockdown orders stamped with red regulatory seals. They marched directly to the executive suite to inform leadership that all regional facilities were officially suspended. Preston stood frozen in horror as he realized that his brilliant streamlining plan had triggered a complete corporate disaster. At that exact moment, the boardroom door swung open and our board chairman, Harrison Vance, walked into the room after landing from New York. Harrison took one look at the police officers, the stack of shutdown notices, and the terrified faces of his executive staff. He walked slowly to the window, watching blue lights flash against the building wall. With a chillingly quiet voice, he asked the room who exactly they had just fired. Gwen stepped forward and told Harrison that my personal license was the sole legal authorization keeping 3 multi-state operations active. She handed him my original memo, proving that leadership had been warned about this exact dependency years ago. Harrison turned toward Preston with burning fury, pointing out that his arrogance had destroyed decades of corporate stability. He stripped Preston of his authority on the spot and ordered him out of the building. By early afternoon, news of the regulatory shutdown leaked, causing company stock values to tumble sharply on the market. Accounting confirmed high 8-figure losses for the day, while clients cancelled contracts left and right. Building security quietly escorted Preston out through a back exit, ending his brief corporate reign in total disgrace. The company was completely helpless, buried under state fines and facing an extensive auditing process that could take months. Later that evening, my phone rang with a call from Harrison assistant, asking if I would consider returning as a high-paid consultant to save the company. I took a slow sip of my tea, listening to her anxious breathing on the line. I calmly told her that they would need to apply for a brand new license from scratch before hanging up. They had thrown away my loyalty, and now they were going to pay for it. Sitting out on my peaceful back porch, I enjoyed the quiet afternoon breeze and the sweet taste of complete vindication. For 20 years, they assumed my quiet nature meant I was powerlessly replaceable, never taking time to understand how the system actually functioned. They learned the hard way that burning down the foundation to save money only leaves you standing in the rubble. Sometimes, the most quiet person in the room holds the ultimate key to survival.